The Chiefs are heading into the divisional round against the Texans well-rested and looking stronger than ever. Not only are they getting back a key player for their defense, but they also have a few others who might just have breakout performances. This could spell trouble for the Texans. I'll dive into all the details, including a new receiver they've signed, as I preview this exciting playoff matchup. But first, let's take a quick look at what's happening. So, the Chiefs made a small roster move today. They signed wide receiver Jason Brownlee to their practice squad. To make space for him, they released veteran tight end Robert Tonyan from the practice squad. Brownlee is a 6'2", 200-pound wideout with impressive athleticism, especially when it comes to his vertical and broad jump, giving him a relative athletic score of 8.95. Though he went undrafted in 2023, he was picked up by the Jets and made their 53-man roster. In his rookie season, he played over 300 offensive snaps, catching 5 passes for 56 yards and a touchdown. Later on, he spent most of this season on the Jets' practice squad, and now with their season over, he's found a new home in Kansas City. While I don't expect him to have a big role in the playoffs, Arrowhead Pride's Jared Sapp thinks his addition could help the Chiefs scout the Texans. With Houston likely to run fewer 2 tight end sets because of injuries, Brownlee's size could be helpful in that role. Now, speaking of the Chiefs, they're just 3 games away from making history with a 3rd Super Bowl win in a row. But standing in their way are the Houston Texans, who they already beat 27-9 back on December 21st. In that game, the Chiefs took control early, with Mahomes throwing for 260 yards and a touchdown, while Hunt led the ground game. The receiving corps was led by Xavier Worthy, Sanar, and Hollywood Brown. That game was also notable for the regular season debut of Maris, which really helped the Chiefs succeed against a defense that runs a lot of man coverage. I expect that trend to continue this Saturday, with Hollywood Brown playing a key role once again. But it wasn't just him. Other pass catchers like Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins also had solid performances. One of the biggest keys to the Chiefs' success last time was their quick passing game, which helped support left guard Joe Thuney. In that game, the Chiefs' offensive line did a great job of countering the Texans' strong pass rush. Mahomes was only sacked once by Christian Harris, while the Texans' C.J. Stroud was taken down twice, once by Joshua Williams and Mike Pennell. The Chiefs' offensive line also included Mike Sendo at left guard and DJ Humph at left tackle, a solid setup against a tough defense. The Chiefs managed 375 yards of offense, controlled the time of possession, and went 3 for 5 in the red zone. Meanwhile, the Texans were just 1 for 3 inside the 20. One of the key reasons the Chiefs won that game was the turnover battle. C.J. Stroud threw 2 interceptions, which helped Kansas City gain an advantage. Winning the turnover battle and being efficient in the red zone are crucial to success. More often than not, if you can score more touchdowns than your opponent and protect the ball, you're going to come out on top. Looking ahead, the Chiefs might have a slightly different offensive line this time. I'm expecting DJ Humph to start at left tackle, which would allow Joe Thuney to move back to left guard, where he is absolutely elite. Thuney played fine at left tackle earlier in the season, maybe even slightly above average at times, but his best position is definitely guard. If Humph can hold his own at left tackle, the Chiefs would have a massive upgrade at left guard with Thuney. The jump from Mike Sendo to Joe Thuney at left guard is huge. So, in my opinion, this setup gives the Chiefs the best chance to succeed. Andy Reid, however, wasn't giving away too much when asked about the left tackle position earlier this week. He said he was happy with the performances of both Joe Thuney and Mike Sendo, but he also liked what he saw from DJ Humph in Week 18 against Denver. Reid mentioned that they'd rotate the players in practice to see how it goes, so we might not know for sure until game time. Let me know in the comments who you'd prefer to see starting at left tackle for the Chiefs. Now, let's talk about the Chiefs' history against the Texans. Since Andy Reid became head coach in 2013, the Chiefs have won 8 out of their 10 matchups with the Texans, an impressive 80% win rate. The 2 losses came in 2016 and 2019, both by just 7 points. But the most unforgettable game was in the 2019 divisional round. the Texans jumped out to a shocking 24-0 lead early on, and things were looking bleak for Kansas City. But the Chiefs quickly turned things around, scoring 4 straight touchdowns before halftime, and ended up winning 51-31. It was a wild comeback, and it's definitely one to remember.
In the Chiefs-Texans history, when it comes to the postseason, any team that makes it to the divisional round is a serious contender and shouldn't be underestimated. With that said, let's take a deeper look at this upcoming matchup, starting with how incredible Patrick Mahomes has been in the divisional round throughout his career. Plus, I have some great news about a key piece of the Chiefs' defense that will be a huge boost. The Chiefs have the home field advantage in this divisional round game against the Texans, which helps explain why they're 8.5-point favorites. On top of that, the weather is going to be brutal. The high will only be 25 degrees Fahrenheit, with a low of 8 degrees Fahrenheit, and wind chills are expected to bring the temperature down to around 0. It's definitely going to be cold, though not quite as extreme as last year's wildcard game against the Dolphins, which saw historic low temperatures. Still, the freezing conditions favor the Chiefs, who are used to playing in these kinds of temperatures, while the Texans, a dome team from Texas, will be facing some tough elements. Before diving into the game itself, let's look at the Texans' recent performance. After losing to the Chiefs on December 21st, they were absolutely dominated by the Ravens on Christmas, losing 31-2. They did manage to tackle Derrick Henry for a safety in the second quarter, but that was pretty much the highlight of their game. The Texans did bounce back with a 23-14 win over the Titans to close out the regular season, but it wasn't a game to take too much from, since C.J. Stroud only threw 6 passes before backup Davis Mills finished the game. However, Houston did manage a surprising 32-2 upset win over the Chargers in the wildcard round, a game that most expected LA to win. A big part of that win was their defense. One player to keep an eye on for the Texans is linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair, who is a key leader on that defense. He played nearly every snap in the wildcard game against the Chargers, but didn't practice on Tuesday due to a knee issue. It's worth noting because Al-Shaair missed 3 games earlier this season because of a knee injury. He was also absent the last time these two teams met because he was serving a 3-game suspension for a dirty hit on Trevor Lawrence. But when Al-Shaair is on the field, he's a major boost to an already strong defense. If he's cleared to play, he'll definitely be out there, and considering he practiced on Wednesday, he seems likely to go. Another area to watch for the Texans is their defensive line, which is a legitimate threat. They finished the regular season ranked in the top 5 for sacks, and just last week they brought Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert down 4 times. Defensive linemen Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. both finished the year with 10 or more sacks. This will be a big challenge for the Chiefs' offensive line. Will Anderson Jr. had a big game last week, recording a sack and a half against the Chargers, but the Texans' defense didn't stop there. They also picked off Justin Herbert 4 times, with one of those interceptions being returned for a pick 6. Another one was nearly taken all the way back as well. Derek Stingley Jr. grabbed 2 of those interceptions, while safety Eric Murray returned one for a touchdown, and rookie Kamari Lasser picked off another. These guys are takeaway machines. In fact, the Texans finished the season with the second most interceptions in the league, and both Stingley and safety Jimmy Ward had 5 picks each. The Texans embarrassed the Chargers in that game, with their defense and special teams contributing 12 of their 32 points. Special teams will definitely be something to watch for the Chiefs, especially with kicker Harrison Butker. Since coming back from IR, Butker has missed at least 1 field goal or extra point in 3 of the 4 games. The good news is that special teams coordinator Dave Toub said Butker is starting to look more like his usual self as the team prepares for this game, so hopefully that issue is behind him. On the defensive side, Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo had a lot of praise for Texans quarterback C.J. Stroud. He's been impressed with the second-year QB and even told him that after their last matchup. Spagnuolo also gave a lot of respect to Nico Collins, the Texans' top receiver, who can't be taken lightly. More on Collins in a bit, but first, let's dive into Stroud's performance. Stroud had a solid game last week against the Chargers, throwing for 282 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. However, That interception didn't really hurt the Texans because the Chargers quickly threw an interception of their own on the very next play. Something worth noting, though, is that the Texans lost 2 fumbles in that game. On the very first play, John Mechie caught a pass from Stroud and immediately had the ball stripped out, with the Chargers recovering. Then, in the second half, running back Joe Mixon fumbled on the Texans' first drive, and the Chargers recovered that one too. So, the Texans ended up with 3 turnovers in that game. If that happens against a team like the Chiefs, it's hard to imagine Houston walking away with a win, especially not by 20 points. As for Patrick Mahomes, he's been fantastic at protecting the football in the second half of the season. Over his last 9 games, he's thrown just 2 interceptions, one of which was a meaningless end-of-game prayer against Buffalo. In the last 6 games, Mahomes has thrown 237 passes, completing 153 of them for over 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, and no interceptions. That's about as clean and efficient as it gets. And when you look at Mahomes' playoff performances, especially in the divisional round, the Texans really can't be excited about facing him. Mahomes has been on fire in the postseason, and it's hard to see how the Texans will slow him down. Patrick Mahomes truly shines in the postseason, especially in the divisional round. In his career, he's played in 6 divisional games as a starter, and he's won all 6. He has a remarkable 70.4% completion rate, a perfect 13-0 touchdown-to-interception ratio, and 16 total touchdowns with no turnovers. His passer rating in these games is an incredible 115.8, which ranks him first in every single category among quarterbacks. It's so impressive that it's almost hard to believe. But while Mahomes is playing at a high level, the Texans are dealing with some key injuries that could impact their performance. Tight end Cade Stover fractured his collarbone during the wild-card game against the Chargers, so he won't be available for this matchup. In that game, Stover caught 4 passes for 28 yards, so his absence will be felt. The Texans are also missing a couple of other key players. Wide receiver Stefon Diggs, who tore his ACL earlier in the season, is on IR, and more recently, wide receiver Tank Dell was placed on IR after getting hurt during his touchdown catch against the Chiefs at Arrowhead. To help with their wide receiver depth, the Texans recently signed Deontay Johnson off waivers. Johnson had a good run with the Panthers, but didn't see much action with the Ravens after they traded for him. He played 2 games with the Texans, catching 3 passes for 24 yards, but the team waived him after he expressed frustration with his lack of playing time. No time for drama in the playoffs, right? With these injuries, tight end Dalton Schultz and wide receivers John Mechie, Robert Woods, and Nico Collins will be the main targets for the Texans. However, Woods is dealing with a hip injury and hasn't practiced recently, and Schultz was limited in practice this week due to a shoulder issue. Schultz is expected to play, but like many players at this point in the season, he won't be 100%. In addition to these injuries, guard Shaq Mason has been recovering from an injury, but has shown some progress. He went from being a DNP, did not participate, on Tuesday, to a limited participant on Wednesday. The Chiefs' defense, especially their interior pass rush, will need to take advantage of this, as Stroud has been one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league. He was sacked twice in the last matchup against Kansas City, but the Chiefs will be looking to increase that number, ideally getting to him at least 3 times, especially on 3rd down. On the flip side, the Chiefs are coming into this game very well rested. Chris Jones spoke to the media today and said that after some much-needed rest, his calf feels great. Patrick Mahomes and his ankle are also good to go, and aside from wide receiver Mecole Hardman, everyone on the Chiefs' injury report is a full participant in practice. That includes safety Shamari Connor. The Chiefs are coming into this game with some good injury news. Cornerback Jalen Watson, who's been on IR, is trending toward returning soon. His rehab has gone well, and when Andy Reid was asked about Watson's progress, he sounded optimistic. Here's what Reid had to say. "I kind of want to see this week and see how he does. But what I've seen so far, it's been good. He's in good shape. I'm not saying he can play a whole game, but he definitely has a chance." Now, if you know Andy Reid, you know he doesn't give out positive updates like this unless the player is close to returning. He typically keeps things vague, saying they'll take it day by day. So the fact that Reid said there's a chance Watson could play means it's pretty likely he'll be out there, even if it's on a snap count. This is huge news for the Chiefs' defense.
The team already has a spot open for Watson since they placed defensive tackle Marlon Tuipulotu on IR last week. Once Watson is activated, I expect to see him back on the field in some capacity, either rotating in on key downs or potentially playing a full role. If he's close to 100% after his injury, Watson could be a massive boost to the secondary. His return will make it harder for CJ Stroud to target just anyone on the field. With Watson out there, the Chiefs' defense becomes a lot tougher. Before his injury, Watson was playing at an elite level. In the 5 games he played before getting hurt, the defense was in the top 10 for EPA per play, expected points added. But after he got injured, the defense dropped to 28th in that category. Now that he's back, it's a huge step toward getting the defense back to its dominant form. You can see from this chart that Watson was great at preventing separation from receivers. If he can play anywhere close to how he was playing before the injury, the Chiefs' secondary is going to be even better. With Watson back on the field, the Chiefs will have a much stronger defense. This is great news, especially since the Chiefs need to focus on shutting down a couple of key players for the Texans. The first player to watch, running back Joe Mixon, who will be a major factor in the Texans' ground game. One of the key players to watch for the Texans is running back Joe Mixon. He had over 100 rushing yards against the Chargers, and when Mixon rushes for more than 100 yards, the Texans win more often than not. The Chiefs did a solid job of limiting him to just 57 yards in their last matchup on December 21st, so keeping Mixon in check will be crucial again in this game. Another player to keep an eye on is wide receiver Nico Collins. He had over 100 yards and a touchdown against the Chargers last week. While the Chiefs did a good job containing him to 7 catches for 60 yards in their previous meeting, Collins is a big threat, especially with Tank Dell out due to injury. Expect the Texans to lean even more on Collins, as well as tight end Dalton Schultz, who caught 5 passes for 45 yards in their Week 16 game. If the Chiefs can limit Collins and Mixon, get pressure on CJ Stroud, and force at least 1 turnover, they had 2 last time, the defense will be in a strong position to succeed. Speaking of the defense, one player to watch on the defensive line, aside from Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, is Charles Omenihu. Omenihu is playing against his former team, the Texans, and has made it clear that he doesn't have the best memories from his time there. He'll be motivated to make an impact in this game. Another former Texan to keep an eye on is safety Justin Reed, who will certainly have extra motivation to perform well. But it's not just the defense. On offense, expect DeAndre Hopkins to get more snaps and production this time around. He caught 4 passes for 37 yards last time they played, but I expect his numbers to rise in this playoff game. With the stakes higher, Hopkins could play a bigger role and deliver more impact on the field. This is exactly why the Chiefs went out and got DeAndre Hopkins. Houston's secondary is already going to have a tough job trying to cover Hollywood Brown, Travis Kelce, and Xavier Worthy. But don't overlook Worthy. He's been on fire lately. Over the last 2 games, especially since Hollywood Brown returned, Worthy has averaged 7.5 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown per game. That's some impressive production from a rookie, and he's going to be a key player in this game. Another dynamic duo to watch will be Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco in the backfield. Both running backs will be well rested, and for the first time since Hunt was signed after Pacheco went down, Hunt won't be sore going into the game. Remember, Hunt was basically signed off the couch, and he was so sore after his first game that he could barely get out of bed the next day. Now that he's fresh, he could be the X factor in this matchup. We haven't seen him fully up to speed with the playbook and his legs fully recovered. With the Chiefs running backs also catching 6 passes for 73 yards in their last game against Houston, I expect Hunt to play a bigger role in the pass game as well. He showed his ability to be a threat as a receiver earlier in the season, with 7 catches for 65 yards against the Broncos, so watch for him to make some unexpected plays. As for the Chiefs overall, they've been perfect at home this season, undefeated at Arrowhead. Mahomes, too, has never lost a divisional playoff game. With all that in mind, I don't see that streak ending now. I'm picking the Chiefs to win 24-17 in what I expect to be a lower scoring game because of the cold weather. Everyone's going to pick the Chiefs to win, and rightfully so. The key to victory? Play a clean game, protect the football, avoid turnovers, and execute well in the red zone. If they do that, it's a guaranteed win in my book. Now I want to hear from you. What's your score prediction, and what are the keys to victory for the Chiefs in this game? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, let's go Chiefs. Let's freaking go.